The bread basket was still warm. I watched my sister lift the lid, take 3 rolls, and pass it to her husband. He took 2 more. Then the lid went back down. My kids hadn't eaten yet. The waiter came, took orders, left. My sister ordered the truffle pasta, $72. My brother-in-law ordered the ribeye, $84. Their kids ordered the lobster mac, $40 each. My dad looked at me across the table and said, very calmly, "Your kids can eat at home." Then he smiled and handed the bread basket to my sister's husband. That's when I realized something was very wrong. I should give you some context. I'm 41 years old. I work in project management for a mid-size logistics firm. I have 2 kids, 9 and 12. Their mother and I co-parent. We do okay. Not extravagant, but steady. For the past 6 years, I've been paying for the family dinners. It started quietly. Dad suggested a restaurant. The bill came. He looked at me. I paid. Nobody said anything. So it happened again. Then again. Then it became the arrangement. Unspoken. Assumed. Every birthday dinner. Every holiday. Every we should all get together dinner that my sister would plan at places I couldn't afford to say no to without looking like the difficult one. 6 years. Dozens of dinners. I stopped counting after the 3rd year because the number made me feel something I didn't want to feel. My sister never offered. My dad never mentioned it. My brother-in-law once made a joke about it. Called me the bank. Everyone laughed. I smiled. I didn't say anything. But that night at the restaurant, the breadbasket night, something shifted. It wasn't the money. It was the sentence. Your kids can eat at home. My kids. Who were sitting at the table. At a dinner I was paying for. While my sister was boxing up $72 pasta she was planning to eat for lunch the next day. I watched her ask the waiter for a to-go container before she'd even finished half the plate. I watched my dad order dessert for the table and then look at my son, who'd only had water and 1 dinner roll, and say, "Oh, they're not having anything sweet. Good for them." My son looked at me. I looked at my plate. I didn't react. I paid the bill. $461, plus tip. On the drive home, my younger daughter asked if we could stop for fries. I stopped. I sat in the drive-thru and thought about the sentence again. Your kids can eat at home. The next morning, I called my dad to talk about it. He said I was being sensitive. That he didn't remember saying it that way. That the dinner was lovely and I should be glad we spent time together as a family. My sister texted me that evening. She said, "Dad told me you called him upset. You know how he is. Don't make it a thing." I didn't respond. I went back through my bank records instead. The last 6 years of dinners. Receipts I'd kept, some out of habit, some without knowing why. I laid them out on my kitchen table. I added them up slowly. So I stopped reacting. And I started watching. I started keeping a log. Nothing dramatic. Just a small notes file on my phone. Date, restaurant, total, who ordered what. The next dinner was 3 weeks later. My sister picked a steakhouse downtown, the kind with leather booths and a sommelier. My dad texted me the reservation details. Just the time and address. No question mark. No, does this work for you? Just the information, like a meeting invite. I went. I watched. My brother-in-law ordered a bottle of wine without asking. $120. He poured glasses for my sister, my dad, and himself. Didn't offer me any. I ordered water. My sister asked for an appetizer plate for the table. $38 of charcuterie that my dad and her husband finished while I was in the bathroom. My kids ate bread again. The bill came. My dad slid it across the table without looking at it. I paid. $380. I went home and updated the log. I did this for 2 more months. Then something happened that I hadn't planned for. My sister's daughter, she's 14, came to stay with me for a weekend while my sister and her husband went to a work retreat. My sister asked me as a favor. I said yes. On the second day, my niece was on her phone at the kitchen table, half watching a show, half talking to me. We were easy around each other. Then she laughed at something on her screen and turned her phone toward me. It was a group chat. The family group chat. The one I'm not in. She didn't realize what she was showing me. I saw my name. I saw my sister's message. I read it in 3 seconds before she pulled the phone back. I didn't react. I asked her if she wanted more juice. She said yes. I got up. I poured it. But I had read the message. My sister had written, "As long as he keeps paying, I'm not saying anything. Dad agrees. We just have to keep him feeling included." The message was from 4 months ago. There were 47 replies in the thread. I didn't ask to see more. I didn't ask my niece about it. I poured the juice, sat back down, and finished breakfast. That evening, after my niece was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad. I wrote down everything I remembered from those 3 seconds. The phrasing. The timestamp. The name of the chat. Then I thought about the receipts. Then I thought about my dad's voice. Your kids can eat at home. Not careless. Not thoughtless. Deliberate. This had been managed. Discussed. Maintained. For 6 years, my family had been running a quiet arrangement. They chose the restaurants. They ordered freely. They took home leftovers. And I paid for all of it, not because I was generous, but because they had decided, together, without me, that I would. I had been managed. The log on my phone wasn't enough anymore. I opened my email and started pulling receipts from the past 6 years. Credit card statements. Bank records. Every dinner I could document. I also started a new note. Not what I was feeling. Just what I could prove. There's a difference between being hurt and having evidence. I understood that now. Confronting them would have ruined everything. I want to be clear about something. I'm not a vengeful person. I've never been someone who plans. I react, I absorb, I move on. That's always been my way. My ex-wife once told me my biggest flaw was that I let things go too easily. That I'd rather keep peace than keep score. She wasn't wrong. But there's a version of letting things go that isn't peace. It's just a longer way of losing. I spent 2 weeks organizing everything quietly. The receipts went into a folder, physical copies printed at the library, not at my home printer. I didn't want anything in my home network flagged or shared. Probably overly cautious. But I was done being careless. I calculated the total. 6 years of family dinners. 41 documented meals. The number was $19,430. I looked at it for a long time. Then I put the folder in a fireproof box in my car. The second thing I did was call a friend, someone I've known since college, who became a family law attorney. Not because this was a legal issue, exactly, but because I needed someone to talk to who was outside the situation and trained to think in terms of documentation and exposure. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The group chat message is the most important thing. Can you get it again?" I told her how I'd seen it. That my niece hadn't realized. She said, "Don't ask your niece. Don't tip anyone off." But that message, if you can get it screenshot directly, changes the character of what happened. It moves it from a family misunderstanding to something closer to coordinated deception. I hadn't used that word. She had. Coordinated deception. I wrote it down. The third thing I did was contact my father's financial advisor. Not to report anything. Just to ask one question, whether my father had ever discussed including me in any estate planning, given my contributions to family expenses over the years. The advisor was cautious. Professional. But he said, "Your name hasn't come up in that context." I thanked him and hung up. I sat with that for a while. Then I made a decision. The next dinner, I would go. I would pay nothing. I would bring one thing with me, a single document. A politely written, factually accurate letter that I had drafted with my attorney friend's guidance. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't threatening. It simply listed the meals, the dates, the totals, and one sentence at the bottom. I will not be contributing to shared family expenses going forward, and I am requesting a conversation about reimbursement for documented past contributions. Attached to it were copies of every receipt. I didn't plan to shout. I didn't plan to cry. I didn't plan to explain my feelings. I was going to hand it to my father at the table, in front of everyone, and say 4 words. I'd like a response. My sister had already texted about the next dinner. A French restaurant. Downtown. She'd included the menu link. The tasting menu was $140 per person, not including wine. She said, "Dad wants everyone there. Should be a great night." I replied with 1 word. Confirmed. I drove past the restaurant 2 days before, just to see it. To make the plan feel real. I sat outside in my car for a few minutes. I thought about my kids eating bread rolls. I thought about my sister boxing up pasta. I thought about 41 dinners and the word included. Then I drove home, made dinner for my kids, and went to sleep. They thought it was just another day. It wasn't. The restaurant was quiet for a Thursday. Soft lighting. White tablecloths. The kind of place where the staff refills your water without being asked. I arrived 5 minutes before my family. I asked the host for a specific table, one near the window, open on 3 sides, no booth walls. I'd thought about this. I wanted space. I didn't want to feel cornered. He seated me there without question. My dad arrived next. Then my sister and her husband. Then their kids. Everyone Saturday. Menus opened. My brother-in-law asked the sommelier for a recommendation. My sister pointed at the tasting menu. My dad leaned back in his chair the way he does when he's comfortable, when everything is going the way he expects. I ordered water. A soup. Nothing else. My sister noticed. She said, lightly, "That's it?" I said, "Yes." The conversation moved. The wine came. Appetizers were ordered for the table, by my sister, for everyone. $40 of shared plates that nobody asked me about. I ate my soup. I waited. When the main courses arrived, I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and took out an envelope. White. Letter-sized. Sealed. I set it on the table in front of my father. He looked at it. He looked at me. "What's this?" I said, "I'd like a response." He didn't open it immediately. He looked at my sister. She looked at me. I didn't fill the silence. He opened it. I watched his face as he read. He's a controlled man. He didn't change expression much, but his jaw tightened, and he set the paper down before he reached the second page. "This isn't the place," he said. "You picked the place," I said. My sister reached across and picked up the letter. She read faster than my dad. Her face shifted. Not to anger, to something quieter. Recognition, maybe. Her husband tried to look at it. She pulled it slightly away from him. The table was silent. My dad said, "These numbers aren't right." I said, "They're from my bank statements. Every receipt is attached." He said, "You've never been asked to pay." I said, "I've never been allowed not to." He didn't have an answer to that. My sister said, quietly, "You should have said something." I looked at her. I thought about the group chat. About the 47 replies. About the phrase, "We just have to keep him feeling included." I said, "I have a copy of a message that suggests you knew." Her face changed. I didn't explain further. I didn't need to. The dinner ended early. No dessert was ordered. My father asked to speak privately. I said I was happy to, through my attorney. I gave him the card my friend had prepared. He held it like he wasn't sure what it was. My sister didn't finish her food. Nobody boxed anything up. I paid for my soup and my water. I left. That was 7 months ago. My attorney friend sent a formal letter within the week. We didn't ask for the full 19,000. We asked for 8. A number we could defend, document, and demand without going to court. My father paid it in 2 installments. There was no apology. There was no family meeting. My sister sent one text that said, "I hope you're happy." I didn't respond. I'm not invited to dinners anymore. That part doesn't hurt the way I expected it to. What I notice instead is something simpler. My kids eat well now. We try new places, just the three of us. Last week my daughter tried gnocchi for the first time. She loved it. My son ordered dessert. We split a tiramisu. The bill was $62. I paid it without thinking twice. I drove home with the windows down. The kids were tired and quiet in the back seat. Nobody said anything important. Nothing needed to be said. That night, everything was quiet.